Now, let's talk about the biotic community of an ecosystem. The biotic community is the living components of an ecosystem. Before studying the interactions among organisms in the biotic community, let us learn some common terms used to describe the biotic community. Common terms used to describe the biotic community includes niche and habitat. A habitat is a place where an organism lives. It is the abiotic environment which provides the conditions that the organism needs to survive. A niche is the role that an organism plays in its environment. It refers to the way of life of an organism in its natural habitat. In a habitat, each species occupies a specific niche. The niche of a species is determined by the temperature range in which the organisms live, the types of food they eat, and the space they occupy. Populations of two species cannot exist stably at the same time if they occupy the same niche. Another common term is species diversity. Species diversity refers to the variety of organisms that make up a community. It is determined by species richness, which refers to the number of species in the community, and relative abundance of different species, which refers to the proportion of different species within the community. Let's consider the following two communities. Both communities 1 and 2 are made up of 4 different species, A, B, C, and D, meaning the species richness is the same. However, when we consider the relative abundance of species, the 4 species are present in similar proportions in community 1, and we can easily notice the 4 different species. On the other hand, we might only notice the most abundant species A, the dominant species, in community 2. Therefore, we can say that the species diversity of community 1 is higher than that of community 2. Now let's talk about the dominant species. Among the different species of a community, there are usually a few species that exerts a strong influence on the composition and diversity of the community. These species are called the dominant species. In terrestrial ecosystems, the types of animals in a community greatly depend on the types of plants living in the same area. Therefore, the dominant species are usually the commonest types of plants. In woodlands, 1 or 2 species of trees are often so numerous that they become the dominant species there. For example, broadleaf trees are the dominant species in woodlands in Hong Kong. When we look back to biotic factors, so how do organisms in a community interact with one another? Organisms in a community interact with one another in different ways, leading to different results. Organisms may gain benefits from, denoted with a positive sign, be harmed by, denoted by a negative sign, or not be affected at all by their relationship with other organisms, denoted with a 0 sign. There are 3 major categories of interaction. First, predation. Predation is the interaction between 2 species in which one species hunts, captures and kills for the other for food. The organism eating the other is the predator. The one being eaten is the prey. In this relationship, the predator gains benefit while the prey is harmed. The populations of both the prey and the predator sometimes follow a cycle. They change in the population of the predator is always lagging behind that of the prey. The population changes of predator and prey can be shown in a graph, and the graph can be separated into periods. In period 1, an increase in the population of the prey results in a corresponding increase in population of the predator because more food is available for the predator. In period 2, the population of the predator increases rapidly because of an abundant food supply. The predator eats up the prey so quickly that the population of the prey starts to decrease. In period 3, the population of the predator decreases because the food supply becomes limited. This allows the population of the prey to recover and a new cycle begins. The second interaction is competition. Competition means fighting for some common needs. For example, food, shelter, mates, and sunlight. All organisms involved in competition are harmed. There are two major types of competition. Intraspecific competition. This refers to the competition among organisms of the same species, such as barnacles on a piece of rock on a shore competing for space and food. There is also interspecific competition. This refers to the competition among organisms of different species, such as barnacles and mussels, competing for the same kinds of food. Intraspecific competition is usually more intense than interspecific competition because individuals of the same species have the same needs. Another type of interaction is symbiosis. In some relationships, two species are so closely associated that they actually live together. Such an association is known as symbiosis. Under symbiosis, there are three common types of symbiotic relationships. First, there is commensalism. Two organisms may live together in such a way that one gains benefits while the other is not affected. This kind of relationship is called commensalism. For example, some barnacles live on the bodies of whales. The barnacles benefit from the whales as they are taken to different places by whales. On the other hand, the whales are unaffected by the barnacles. The second type of symbiosis is mutualism. Two organisms may live together in such a way that both gain benefits, and this kind of relationship is called mutualism. For example, certain sea anemones live on shells of hermit crabs. The sea anemones benefit from the movement of the hermit crabs and also from their food remains. The hermit crabs gain protection from the toxin-containing cells on the tentacles of the sea anemones. The last type of symbiosis is parasitism. Some organisms live on or inside other organisms, obtaining benefits from them and causing them harm. This kind of relationship is called parasitism. The organism which benefits is the parasite. The organism being harmed is the host. For example, tapeworms are parasites affecting some mammals, for example humans. They live inside their host's intestines and absorb digested food from them. The tapeworms benefit by obtaining nutrients from the hosts, while the hosts are harmed through the loss of nutrients. After talking about biotic interaction, let's talk about ecological succession. So what is ecological succession? The variety of species in a community in an ecosystem changes gradually as a result of interaction between organisms and their physical environment. The series of changes in the composition of a community over a period of time is called ecological succession. In the process of ecological succession, organisms modify their environment in ways that allow other species to come in and replace them. The process repeats and the species diversity progressively increases as more and more species appear in the community. Species diversity reaches a maximum when a climax community is reached. The climax community consists of the maximum number of organisms that can be supported by a habitat. It is stable unless there are sudden changes in the environment, for example, fire, drought, etc. There are two major types of ecological succession. The first one being primary succession. Primary succession starts with the colonization of a barren area where there are no soil or organisms before. An example of such an area is land covered with cooled lava after a volcanic eruption. When lava cools down, it forms barren rock. Lichens are often the first type of species to colonize a barren area because they are able to grow in adverse, dry conditions. Lichen spores are brought to the barren rocks by wind. As the lichen grows, they form the pioneer community. Organic matter accumulates and the rocks are broken up into smaller particles, forming soil. Mosses, ferns, and grasses start to grow. They become established over most parts of the rocks and become the dominant species. They provide food and shelter for plant-eating animals. Dead, decaying plants and animals, as well as animal waste, form humus, which further enriches the soil. The soil becomes thick enough for the growth of shrubs. The shrubs grow over the grass and ferns and become the dominant species. More animals are attracted to the habitats because there are more food and shelter. Finally, the soil becomes thick and rich in nutrients. It can support the growth of trees, which grow over the shrubs, and the trees become the dominant species. The habitat becomes a woodland that attracts increasing number of animals. A climax community is reached. Besides primary succession, there is also secondary succession. Secondary succession takes place in areas once supported life but are now barren, such as woodland after a hill fire and abandoned fields. The stages that takes place in secondary succession are similar to those in primary succession, except the following. Pioneer communities of lichens are not needed because soil is already present. Also, secondary succession usually develops more quickly than primary succession. This is because seeds, roots, and underground vegetative organs of plants may still survive in the soil. They grow and develop into new plants rapidly once conditions become favorable. This is the end of the video. Thank you for watching. Please give us a like and subscribe to our channel. Click on the tab to watch the next part of the video series.